Hey guys, so I know it's just nearing the end of the show, and we here is Polycom. We got Chris over there with us at Polycom. We're very excited to sort of go into this community, into this research community, and um, presenting you more in the endpoint space because we as Polycom we're an endpoint vendor. We'd just like to show you the innovation, the new innovation behind endpoints. So there's a lot of innovation going on in the soft switch and the free switch side, but we're here. I'm showing you um, how how basically the value of endpoints being cloud managed. And so I'm gonna go here and do that. Right. So just an introduction about me. So I came in from OBI Technology, which is acquired by Polycom in January 29. Typically, the reason behind the acquisition and the strategy we're going forward with OBI and Polycom is that we're introducing cloud management to our endpoints. So I came in from a team who's been in the industry for more than 20 years, and we're continuing to bring innovation, from back in the Cisco Linksys days over to now in Polycom. So just a little bit of history about the team behind the cloud management. So have you guys ever heard here about Komodo technology? Komodo? All right. That was back in 1999. So now we get to Sapura, which is the same team, founded the same team. So you just notice here the logos are all the same, and then it's called. So we sort of bringing that into perspective. So now, Sapura got acquired by Linksys, and Cisco was responsible for the Cisco SPA, ATAs and IP phones. Like one of the first color IP phones out there was from our team. So now enter OBI back at 2010, where I joined in, and now OBI has gotten acquired by Polycom. So this is, following from this is where we're going forward with Polycom. So just little products out there. If you guys are familiar with these devices, this is just the portfolio that the team has had, entering now OBI and now Polycom. Right. So cloud-based managed devices. Right. So how is cloud management important on these devices? So first of all, if a service provider is out there and they're trying to deploy devices, and they already know what they're deploying. They already have their provisioning intact. They already know what they're provisioning. But sometimes you don't get to see what the endpoint is actually running. What are you actually giving to your customers? What configurations are there in the endpoint? What kind of network is it running at? What kind of calls or call quality that the endpoint's going through? So now with the cloud management, you're basically getting a tether into the device from our cloud that our service providers have access to. And typically the scenario here that I'm trying to describe here is where it fits, right? So one of the things where a lot of confusion happens is that we're taking over your provisioning. The answer to that is false. We're not taking over your provisioning. We're actually adding as a supplement to your provisioning. So service providers could already have their provisioning however they want, however they set it. We leave that to them. But basically, this sort of management out-of-band tether is a layer on top of that to supplement provisioning, such as bootstrapping, provisioning to the devices, and just stats collection of the device overall. And so that's what we mean by out-of-band. This is just a supplement to whatever you're doing. You're already experts in your provisioning. We let that happen. So on top of that, we're adding, so we have two forms. We have a web portal, which is already a form front end, and we also have an API that you can programmatically it's kind of like a machine-to-machine management that you can take control in your own front end. So for example, you have internal support. You can use our tools to find call quality statistics. You can use our tool to find what kind of firmware it's running. If you want to reboot the device, if you want to get your provisioning to sync properly, this is where the device could really go in and see to give you full control of the device. So without further ado, let me go show you a demo on this. So I have a browser here with a login. And so essentially, these are all the devices that I'm connected to. I got a VVX phone there. I got a couple of OB phones there. But essentially what you're seeing here is a portal to go inside the device and to see whether if it's online or offline, what firmware it's running, if the provisioning is successful or not. Um, Basically everything else, all the data that you can collect in the endpoint. The point is you can grab that remotely from all your deployments and really just to check overall what your status is, or what your device's status and overall health is. So if I go, if being that we're connected to the endpoint, you can go and see from the information that you're collected, you can see in a more macroscopic view, given this cloud-based management, of how many devices are offline. How many devices are offline more than 7 days, right? Is your customer really getting these phones? Are they really using their phones? Are they really not using their phones? That's information that you can see, right? A couple things even further. You can know if your phone's registered or not. If your end user is sort of having a sort of internet problems, you can really see where the problem with the registration is, whether if it's 404, you can't find the server when you register, or if it's a 403, you're doing something wrong. You can actually tackle all this without even having the end customer call you to say, hey, my phone doesn't work. So overall, you're getting a more reputation of a more reliable service because your endpoints are well connected to your service and your endpoints are well, you can really see what's going on. You can even go to firmware, right? So let's say a couple of the firmwares support some kind of certificate that a couple of new firmware requirements would have, and you would have a firmware requirement. So when you're trying to deploy these devices, you also want to know what kind of firmware you're running, because if, for example, the firmware didn't load successfully due to some network issues, now you can find out. Now you can find out how many devices there are. So if I want to find out if my ATAs, let's say, are running at this version here, and I want to find the ATAs that are an older version, which I don't have. But let's say I have a 361, let's say like a 361 here. So I can find, with this filter, I can find the devices that are not running with the firmware that I want. And so that's just one of the examples of the millions of examples that that cloud management is to the endpoints is really valuable in this case, because you can really troubleshoot what's going on. And this is just firmware. You can even go further on with other data from the endpoint. So one of the things I want to show you is, so here I have a phone. Let's see if this is actually online. Okay. So I have a 250 here. It shows that it's offline. I want to verify if it's online now. Okay, great. So I have this phone here, number 6, and it's online currently. I'm refreshing the status if it's registered or not. I can go into this device. I can see why it's registered, it's failing. It's a 404, no response to server. They're on here. I don't have to check to the local network. I don't have to ping into the local network. I can just go to this cloud and see, okay, your register is failing. So going further, you can actually provision. You can use our cloud as a provisioner as well. And this is not inhibiting to your provisioning, but more as a supplement to it. So how we kind of develop this is that the cloud provisioning or your own provisioning takes precedence over our cloud's provisioning. But since you can control your own provisioning, you can let go some of the parameters in your own provisioning and let OB talk, or in this case we're banning as PDMSSP, which is Polycom Device Management Services. You can do that. You can do that here. This is fully in your control. The other thing about cloud management that really excites them, really excites us, and especially our service provider partners, is being able to go to the local web page right here and there. So typically there's a lot of troubleshooting cases where you're going into a truck roll, let's say, right, and you just want to get to the local network to change like a DHCP setting to like a static. Here you can just do that off the bat. You don't have to do a truck roll. You just go into this portal, and all you have to do is go to the WAN settings here, just like you would in a local web page, and just change it. So change the static, and then you can just go submit. I hope this phone doesn't go away. So I'm not going to put this into static. So I'm just going to leave it there. But let's say I'm going to change something like a time zone, right? So I'm going to go to this one right here. I'm going to change it to Central, right? Because we're on Central, not Pacific. So I'm going to change this just like a local web page would. So then it would get that, and I would just reboot the device right here from the cloud. If you can see, the device should reboot in a few. So then it's now getting all the configuration that you have in the local. And so that's how the local web page, the interactive local page is what I would say goes into the device. So now the next thing is, how do I do this on multiple phones? Enter base profiles. So in base profiles, like I said before, we have like a cloud management would have a provisioning. And so I would go into the base profile that it has. So let's say I have the base profile connected to this phone, and I want to say I want to change my time zone. I could just do it from this XML. And so that would require you, that would basically get phones that are subscribed to that base profile to get put in there. So that's one of the examples. Another example, going further into the cloud and the ability to just go into an endpoint via the cloud, is you're able to capture PCAPs from this phone. So let me give you an example here. So I'm going to a UCS device running 5.8, which is our new version. I can go and start PCAP here. Now I would send the command to the phone, right? Send a command to the phone saying, okay, I want PCAP. So go when you're in your customer call, just say, hey, make a call right now, the call that you're seeing that's failing, and go see, let us gather all the information, all the PCAPs you need. So unfortunately, the device is over there. I can't grab there, but there's some other packets too, right? So I'm going to go and stop the PCAP. So what it does in this portal is that I could just, the cloud would grab that PCAP, and I could just go in here and just refresh this page. I can go here and download the PCAP. And there you go. Basically, I have all the captures I captured in 30 seconds, but it's not a lot. But basically, the point is, you're able to go into this cloud management piece. You can get to things like PCAP and logs and every device you need to troubleshoot whatever calls you're experiencing that's not working. So on top of that, I've been showing you all this web portal stuff. We also, like I mentioned before, we also have an API that you can use to sort of use your own front end to get more devices managed via your own front end. So we have a service API document here that just shows you how you can programmatically do it. And I'm just going to show you a little bit demo here on how this API sort of works. So usually in a REST API environment, you would create a session, and then you would have a token, and then you can do whatever you want over there. So now I'm just going to go to open a session. It's going to demo you how to reboot a device from the API. So I have a live document here. I just enter my credentials here. So in this API doc, it will say in JSON, I would have that. I would have my log information. So then I would put it here, right? So I got something prepared here. So it would have this, and the URL is gonna, inside the URL, it's gonna have this JSON command, and then I can just go submit a request just to log in. And then you have the server, our client will return a 201 created. And so here you have the token, you have the organization, and everything else. So now I'm already logged in. Now I want to find out this device. I want to reboot this particular device. So then what I would go to is, I would just go to devices and find this device ID that I was trying to find. So if I go to Let's Collection here and I type in, let's say this is the MAC address of this phone. So let me find the MAC address of this phone. Actually, I can do it over the portal. Why should I do it over there? I can go here. I'll find that VVX250. I'll find this MAC address here. Submit request. 200 OK. Then I get this data, right? So in your API script, you can extract this information. And then I could go to things like reboot device, right? So I'll go to reboot device here. I would enter the device. And so this tool is just this is just more of a demo kind of tool. But really, when you're going into your environment, the URL here, that's what you request to the server. So now I would just submit a request here to one created, and my phone should reboot. That's how I use the API. And moreover, more than just rebooting a device, you would get things like, I want to push a parameter via the API to all these phones. You could do that in your script to just basically provision any kind of parameter you need, right? Like time zone, and that's my favorite demo, time zone. Time zone's like my favorite demo, but there's other things as well, like SIP registration or password or anything like that. You can go into the phone remotely and just use this API to do that. So okay, so now this is a little bit of summary. We can reboot a device from a web portal and API. You can capture a PCAP or a syslog. You can do all this stuff. So now, to a service provider, sometimes you want to know what kind of call qualities you're experiencing. So let's say in a region in California somewhere, you know that there is a bit of an internet problem that you want to solve. So I could just go into this, I could just go into a, using my API to sort of call information from the device, a lot of devices. I call on that information and I find out, okay, what's my average mean score? So throughout all my service, what kind of MOS scores are my customers getting? What are they getting? So now you're seeing here that I can find out, the mean opinion score as of 3 hours ago. And I can even go and select and say, you know what, these calls don't look right. I'm running a service on G711, but I'm getting a MOS score of 3.5. So I want to see this. So then you go to here and you sort of find out all this data that says, okay, my packet loss ratio, yeah, so far pretty good. It's not too high. But then I go to end system delay. And I see this as like, okay, that's a problem. That's a problem right there, the end system delay. And I'm getting a lot of these call durations where it's like mostly 1 minute. I got something here, I think that's like 30 minutes. But mostly it's like these 1 minute calls. I'm able to grab information too. Whether it's outgoing and receiving, what kind of models it's going through. So for example, if you only have your ATAs, only your ATAs are having that problem. You can just go to that ATA and find out, okay, let's only focus on these ATAs and the MOS scores that are 3.5 or below, and really just look at them at a more microscopic level. So now you're sort of seeing here just the OB number. So the OB number, or what we're calling the PCS number, is the unique, it's like a unique 9-digit number for every OB device. And so with every unique 9-digit OB number device, I'm able to see from the cloud management tether what kind of call qualities am I experiencing, or if my customers are experiencing. And you can just go into one of these devices and just go into their management and push out the configs as you need. So that's the call quality demo that I'm showing here. So, overall, all of this demo I'm showing you, what does this all mean, and really what it means to me as I work with the service providers today. So, one of the things is to mitigate risk to revenue. Essentially, it's if you're having devices, if you're risking customers every day because you don't know what's happening to your device, this is the way to mitigate that risk. What kind of preemptive strikes you can get to your customers? How do you fix this quickly? How do you just go into, without waiting for a technician to come on site, you can just go and tackle those cases right away. And with all that, you can close tickets faster, right? That's ultimately the way you want to get a good, reliable running service. Is you want to close tickets fast, you want to solve the customer's problem right then and there, really quickly. Second knowledge is lowering operational expense. So if you're deploying a lot of truck rolls out there to customers just to switch something or just to remote into the network and all that, now with the cloud, with that connection, with that advanced data connection to the endpoint, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just go into if the phone is connected to our cloud, and you have access to our cloud, you can just go in there, and you can just go and fix all the problems right then and there remotely. And with that, you can grow and launch your services faster. Like we have a deployment scenario called Zero Touch, which essentially what it does, it would customize the device at the firmware level. So even before it reaches the internet, you can actually configure the devices. So let's say you have a VLAN parameter that you need to put in, or LDP. You will need to put that LDP and you need to turn it on before it hits the network, before it hits your provisioning, before it's Wi-Fi, before it hits 802.1x authentication. You can do so with our cloud to customize that device so that I can go and connect to the internet to the customer side without any supervision. And that's really where we're bringing the zero-touch deployments to another level. And of course, to simplify deployments, right? I mean, when you're rolling out a lot of people to go on site and fix their problems, that's a lot of organization. That's a lot of expense. With this cloud, with this tether, everything could just be run in a central office. So that's where this is overall where the cloud engine fits. So let's see. So yeah, overall in here, you've seen the screenshots, but this is what you can really do with your cloud management. You can know the overall health of your service, right? You want to know you want your MOS scores to be really high. You want your packet loss ratios to be high. I mean, you want packet loss to be low. And basically the overall health of your status. You have a macroscopic value. You have a macroscopic view of your cloud, of your device, so you can really go and look how you're actually doing. The other thing is to identify your issues accurately and quickly. I mean, if you can just go as easy as just going to this portal and that API and just say, okay, I have a VVX250 here. I want to know if it's static or DCP. I want to know whether if it's running on Wi-Fi or not, what kind of speeds I'm getting. If my registration is failing, and you can just go and just change it right away there in the cloud. I mean, that's really nice. And I go back to this PowerPoint here. And yeah, overall having control of your provisioning process. So when you're provisioning something, let's say you have your own provisioner, you push it into the endpoint. You want to know what's there. You want to know what's going on, what kind of parameters you're actually provisioning, and what got through and what didn't get through, and what did it. Basically, it's just more control of provisioning. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that. This is sort of just an example of what you would do as a service provider or a reseller to get to how easy it is to just set up your architecture with PDM SSB, with Polycom, with our cloud, to get through to the end user, to the hands of the end user. Yeah, that's all I have today. So
big round of applause for Wilson.